The following is a couple of responses to our Unban episode. This is timely because we just got the ban and restricted update, so here we go. Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of our Patreon supporters out there. Thank you to the Durdle Maniacs. If you want to be a Durdle Maniac, go to patreon.com/Eternal Durdles and help support the channel. It keeps things going. It keeps things updated. Thanks so much for watching. On with the show. So, Doola, you think EarthCraft should be unbanned, and we missed this on our episode, and I wanted to invite you on to talk about it. So, tell me your thoughts on EarthCraft.
All right, so I think at bare minimum, it's no stupider than Dark Ritual Doomsday. It's no dumber than Show and Tell Emrakul Atraxa, right? It's no dumber than Sticker Goblin off a cavern or something.
I mean, what's not dumber than Sticker Goblin,
right? It's super easy to interact with, or at least maybe not super easy, but there's tons of things that interact with it beyond just force of will. There's Besage You, there's binding, there's creature removal, there's all sorts of stuff, right? And one piece, like the EarthCraft itself, does nothing.
Yeah,
agreed. It's a little.
Doesn't even draw a card.
Doesn't even draw a card at 1 and a G, right? The conditions to meet are kind of easy deck building wise. Like you play creatures, some land ramp and stuff. It's admittedly like a pretty easy condition to meet for it to do something.
Yeah.
But the second part of like a combo with Squirrel's Nest, like Squirrel's Nest does nothing. Like that card's trash. Yeah. But yeah, so what's that? 2 GGG for a 2-card combo that doesn't win on the same turn. That's easily interactable with. Like it makes no sense to me that people can when the other local last week, and it was like I get Ritual Doomsday on turn 1.
Yeah,
and I brought up, I'm like, man, they just fucking unban EarthCraft, please. And they're like, yeah. They're like, oh, I don't know, man. That's some pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah,
and it's like coming from the person who's like, I'm gonna double thought seize you. Ritual Doomsday, and they're like, I don't know, man, pretty powerful stuff. I don't think we can have that. It's a joke, it's a complete joke. And
so I guess what's important is, so what would you do with Doomsday? You were talking about putting on Squirrel's Nest, but to someone not that's listening, what do those cards do?
So EarthCraft, if you put Squirrel's Nest on a land, you make the creature. EarthCraft lets you tap that creature to untap the squirrel nested land, and you make infinite 1/1 squirrels
that are tapped.
That are tapped.
Yeah.
Well,
so even if you could give them haste through, say, Concordant Crossroads, they're tapped. So
yeah. So I think people used to do Goblin Bombardment as another thing. So now adding another card to the combo, right?
Yeah, another card. You could do. I mean, the old school combo was with Sacred Mesa back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Wild Growth and Sacred Mesa, right?
Yep. So yeah, that's another way to do it. I mean, I honestly think of it sort of just as a really high value piece, right? Just even going Forest Sprawler, Wild Growth, and then turn 2 you have you can play the EarthCraft, fetch for a Dryad Arbor, untap the land, play an Argothian, untap the land, play something else. You can get the engine going, get a ton of value out of it pretty quickly, turn 2 for sure. But again, you can interact with the pieces, and it's not gonna win the same turn. It's just for me, it's just if you get I don't like playing Magic when it's when there's not interaction.
Yeah,
actively even if it's oh man, you're the graveyard deck and I got Leyline of the Void out, now you're screwed, haha, GG's. That's not actually fun for me. You get the win. It's
we were
it's not
talking
fun.
about this today on Twitter, where there's this whole Blood Moon debate, and is that fun? Yeah, it's definitely a strategy. Is it fair? Sure.
Yeah.
Is it fun? No, it sucks.
Yeah,
it's the worst.
It's just it's definitely something's rotten where you feel compelled to play ley lines. Yeah. Right, to fight against certain strategies, but
I would almost rather whatever the answer was just killed me.
Yeah.
Like if my deck loses to Blood Moon, whatever Blood Moon does on top of that should just do 20 damage to your opponent.
Yeah.
Like, just because we know what the actual outcome is,
Yeah. Yeah. So there's just like, and all right, to be fair, like there's stupid things, like there's bound to be stupid things in Legacy. That's fine. Like I honestly kind of think Show and Tell is like kind of like fine as a combo deck. Like that's like kind of cool. But like Doomsday strikes me as like it reminds me of what was it, like Hermit full English Breakfast. It strikes me as that, where it's like you need this like oddly specific card, like this narrow thing, or else like you're dead. Like and it's just like it just seems silly. But like with all of that happening in the format, we can't have EarthCraft.
Yeah.
Like I would but like, oh, and I'll say this too. All in all, I'd rather you keep EarthCraft banned and we just do something about the ridiculously stupid combo decks. Like I don't have like you know, but I doubt that's ever going to happen. Like it's just never going to happen. So it's like, so give us some juice.
Yeah, let's have some fun with EarthCraft. Now the real I have to, we got to point this out, even though I never take this into account when I'm doing an Unban episode. It is on the reserve list.
For sure. Yeah.
So I mean, what is it right now? It's $94 for EarthCraft. That would only go up if EarthCraft was unbanned. So I feel like there is that is technically a reason, but there's no real reason why they can't do a functional reprint of this card. They they keep saying they won't do that, but then like look at Donate and Harmless Offering. That is literally a functional reprint of Donate. There's no difference to the text on that card aside from the fact that it's red mana instead of blue mana.
Yeah.
So they could easily make Groundcraft and
Skycraft.
Yeah.
It's one in a blue.
One in a blue. Oh god.
Yeah. But they've come close. Like Cryptolith, right? Made it so your creatures could tap for, you couldn't do it with haste, but like they've gotten close to it. They've kind of like danced around it, which is cool. And like obviously, like that would be like I would prefer if EarthCraft. I mean, I have EarthCraft, but like I would prefer if other people want to play Enchantress, they didn't have to pay $800 or something when it spikes to play it. But I mean, like, would people even want to?
I mean,
like
I'll be honest, it's not a flavor of Magic that I would go after, but like I'd be fine if it showed up at my local,
Yeah, like but yeah.
We have an Enchantress guy at my local. I just played Harmonic Convergence against him all the time. I don't know. Do you know what Harmonic Convergence is? I think I actually had this conversation with you. Fun fact: Doola and I rode on the Amtrak to Eternal Weekend together.
Yeah.
So for like 9 hours, he just had to sit there while I just punished him with random Magic stories. Yeah. So So did I tell you about the Harmonic Convergence?
No. I imagine it's like a Back to Nature.
Oh,
type
it's way
blowout,
better than
right?
Back to Nature.
Okay.
So Harmonic Convergence, because like Replenish exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Harmonic Convergence takes all of target opponent's enchantments for 3 mana, it's instant, and puts them on top of their deck.
Great. Awesome.
Dude was like, because everybody else was siding in Back to Nature against it. I was like, for 1 more mana, I can ruin your day.
Yeah.
Like you can't replenish this back from the yard. Like.
Well, there you go too. To my point, it's like you can interact with this stuff pretty easily. That like it's just I don't know if you play pre-modern, like pre-modern Enchantress is pretty dang good deck, and there's tons of interaction with it. But you have Replenish, but like there's back and forth there. It's not like it's not as stupid. It's not as stupid as the other combos going on. But I think I've settled on I'd rather everything else just kind of go down a notch power level wise than feed the beasts, so to speak, of like, well, now you got to give us juice and then we're going to do stupid things. And it's like, like I kind of would rather just like bring it down a notch and just play a little bit more fair Magic. So
final verdict, ban Doomsday and EarthCraft could stay off of the ban list.
Maybe
on the ban list, I should say.
Maybe, I don't know. Just just something, or just, I mean, like another thing too would be just like, give us, because it's a weird thing, right? You want to boost one archetype. So like EarthCraft being unbanned, would that actually be something elves would want to use? It is that like a bad thing? But so selfishly, as an Enchantress player, I want a new card to be, at the ready that only helps us. So, another alternative is just print something.
EarthCraft and it draws a card.
Yeah, literally, it replaces itself.
Yeah.
God, it's good. Well, I mean, like this is a little sidetrack.
EarthCraft.
I'd play EarthCraft. I don't know what it does, but it's in there, right? If it's an enchantment that draws a card, I mean, that's a pretty low threshold for what it needs to do, right? So. I
mean, you've played Miri's Guile, so let's be honest.
Yeah, well, that's like the what do they call it? It's like the not Rorschach test, but the
litmus test.
Maybe litmus test. Let's think. What's the Blade Runner one called?
Oh God, the Turing test.
Yeah, it's like whatever it is, but it's sort of like that for like Enchantress players in a way, because there's like. You're like, oh, just play Sylvan Library. Miri's Guile's trash. Don't play Miri's Guile. And then like you play enough Enchantress that like you get to the road of like Miri's Guile's great. Miri's Guile's just awesome in this deck. It's so good. It's one green enchantment. It's amazing. Comes down early.
Void
Kampf. Yeah,
Turing test is the test we use now to see if robots are people.
Great. Yep.
Alan Turing from like, I don't know, World War II or something.
Yeah. There's a cryptography, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool stuff. What else? Any other questions? Or
no, I think you've covered it well. We've got a few more cards to talk about, but Doola, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned. All right, I'm here with Eric Ratkowski, Doomsday player. And Eric, you found a blind spot of ours on our Unban episode, and I wanted to have you talk about first the most obvious glaring card, and then another card that you brought up as well.
Yeah, so I thought that what Phil and you said about Imperial Seal was kind of off base, and you contacted me and were like, also this thing about Mystical Tutor. I don't even remember. You guys went through Mystical Tutor really quickly, but Mystical Tutor is even more egregious. So I think they both fit into the same category of combo enablers, and that's what I would like to talk about, and hopefully why you brought me here.
Yeah, it's exactly why we brought you on. Imperial Seal was a card that I really didn't think too harshly on, because it's just a slower Vampiric Tutor, and I know Vampiric Tutor's too much, but I was like, yeah, whatever, like Vampiric Tutor at sorcery speed, who cares? And I think that's where Phil was coming from, but you have a slightly different opinion about that.
Yeah, so I think that something that holds back combo decks in Legacy in general is lack of consistency. And I'm quoting the great Rich Cowley, but Delver is a 50-50 deck. It doesn't have any really great matchups, and it doesn't have any really bad matchups. Combo decks like Doomsday, which is mostly where I'm speaking from a point of expertise, always have matchups where they're almost unlosable, like 12 Post or Death and Taxes. Obviously they can be, but they're good matchups. And then there's bad matchups, which often includes Delver, which one of the drawbacks of playing Doomsday is that you're a dog to the best deck in the format. But part of why that exists is because there's no consistency, or there's not as much consistency. And Doomsday, of course, is forced to play Personal Tutor in order to have enough Doomsdays. Beseech the Mirror Storm is playing less than ideal things like Beseech the Mirror, which does have a high cost, and they play Wishclaw Talisman sometimes, and they play Burning Wish, and all of these things aren't quite perfect. They're still really strong, and those decks are still quite good, and if you give them any time at all, you're going to lose. It's why 12 Post doesn't just run away with everything. So Imperial Seal does that way better than Personal Tutor does. Mystical Tutor we won't even get into because it's blue and it gets everything that I need in Doomsday. It doesn't get everything that you might need. It doesn't get artifacts if that's what you're looking for in Storm, but in Doomsday, 100%. And when I did my little piece for you on Doomsday, I talked about how I divide my deck roughly into 5 piles. There's lands, there's the combo, that's Doomsday, Thassa's Oracle, maybe Personal Tutor if I'm doing that. Then there's protection, and there's fast mana. And then the last one is cantrips. And cantrips are there to improve the consistency. If I could cut the cantrips and just go get the parts that I need, which Imperial Seal absolutely does, and Mystical Tutor absolutely does, I would. Because Brainstorm has, obviously, its powerful uses. Ponder, people have tried around, fiddled around with playing less of them. But yeah, Imperial Seal would immediately just like go straight in there and do the job.
Well, I think that's kind of one of the interesting points is that, we obviously Phil and I don't play Doomsday. I have the deck built, but I don't run it out very often. But you're in sort of a unique point to point out like what issues does Imperial Seal solve for Doomsday in that particular scenario?
Well, obviously, first of all, it's copies 5 through 8 of Doomsday. I can't tell you how many infinite number of games I've lost to just not finding Doomsday at all. Every Doomsday player has stories of digging 48 cards deep in their deck or whatever absurd number, and all the Doomsdays are stacked on the bottom or whatever.
That's an issue that Stasis has too.
Turns out that if the deck is named after a card, you got to find that card. So obviously that's why we're playing Personal Tutor. But Imperial Seal goes further because it also finds the fast mana and it finds protection. And something that makes Doomsday a little more resilient than other all-in combos is the fact that I can play my own protection. And it's why I feel like I have a generally positive matchup against other combo decks. I'm not a glass cannon. I have universal answers in Force of Will. And this came to me just a little bit earlier, long time ago, maybe middle of last year. Force of Phil, the great Force of Phil, was on this long-term bit about how Force of Will was not good, and he was cutting Force of Will or talking about how it's not good. And then
it's not a bit.
And the thought in the back of my head there is like, yeah, he's right. It's a bad card, but it is a universal answer, which is why no one can ever cut it. Because if you cut that card, then you lose to what is not really the big thing that a deck is trying to do. You lose to all their other nonsense. Like Initiative, they're not trying, they don't care if their Chalice resolves or not, but they're going to throw it out there. And if you waste a couple cards on that, that's less that you have to fight the Initiative. So Doomsday is able to play this generic answer against all kinds of things that you might throw against it. It gets Endurance, it gets Chalice of the Void, Deafening Silence, Dress Down. Like, it just solves all those problems. Which brings us all back to the consistency. If I could open a hand of Doomsday, Dark Ritual, Land, and Daze every single time, I would win a significantly high percentage of my games. I don't think there's a 4-card hand from Delver that you would say would win as high a percentage. No. If I could open a 4-card hand of 3 of those in Imperial Seal every time, I'd also win a high percentage of my games because Imperial Seal just becomes whatever the last thing I need.
This episode is brought to you by Tales of Adventure. Go to toamagic.com and use the code Durdles for 5% off your order. You'll be directly supporting the show, and you'll get the entire order in one package. No more waiting for several packages. That's toamagic.com, code Durdles for 5% off. So, okay, moving from Imperial Seal to Mystical Tutor, Imperial Seal gets every other card that a Mystical Tutor can't, but is the instant speed that important? Is that the main difference?
Well, no, that it's blue, I would say, is the main difference. And specifically with Doomsday, Mystical Tutor still gets all the important things while being blue. Again, I think I mentioned that I'm not sure it does the same thing for Storm, but I don't know as much about Storm. And I think that
it's blue as in like it pitches to Force of Will?
Yes, that's 100% important. Yeah,
okay.
Because something holding back Doomsday from playing more protection in the form of discard is the fact that you have to keep your blue count relatively high. And against like control decks, You sometimes want to have 2 oracles. They don't have a clock. And if you have to pitch one of your oracles to force on the first turn, it removes options that you have. Ghost pile. But so yeah, being blue is a huge thing. But the instant speed also, it does away with another stumble that Phil made, which was that it sure seemed, and I watched it again, it sure seemed like he thought Imperial Seal revealed, which it does not.
He may have thought that. I certainly did not.
Okay. Well, so like if I
Imperial Seal is banned in my EDH group because we have a rule about no blind tutors, because being able to search for whatever you want leads to like a 20-minute turn where you're just like, how do I answer and win? You know? So that's one of those cards that I'm very aware that definitely does not show off.
Well, that's another place where Mystical Tutor's instant speed does matter. Because if I Imperial Seal on turn 1 off basic Swamp, you have no idea what I'm getting, even if you know that I'm on Doomsday. If I Mystical Tutor at the end of your turn for Doomsday, sure, now you know I'm going to cast Doomsday on my next turn, but you're not going to play your turn any different because that's happening at the end. Or if I played in response to your Chalice on 1 or your cantrip or whatever it is that you're doing. You can stop them the same way.
Well, it kills the ponder important option too. Like I can't ponder knowing that you're going to do that and figure it out. So any sorcery speed answers, as it were, are dead to set up a turn against your turn. So I think that's actually a pretty salient point.
Yeah, I think that Mystical Tutor 100% cannot come off the ban list. Imperial Seal does cost life. It is sorcery speed. It is black. Maybe that's fine. Maybe it turns out that the card and the life loss aren't as consistent as I'm thinking that they would be. But, man, I'd sure love to try.
The life loss has me thinking. Because, like, if you Imperial Seal, I have to assume you're going to try and win, right?
Yes. And a significant percentage of the time.
Unless I have something on the board that stops you from winning, and then you're going to look for the answer.
Yes. Yeah. The more I think about it, the Imperial Seal is just too good.
Well, I'm glad we've come to that conclusion.
Yeah. And even you saying, like, maybe the life loss matters, it doesn't matter that much. In another great Force of Phil moment, he has been trying to convince me that Doomsday is actually a life gain card, because it reduces the cost of life you paid pre-Doomsday in half.
Okay, yeah, sure, that's fair.
It's absurd, but
yeah, like all of your fetch lands cost one half of your life, one half of a life now. I get you.
Yeah, if I Imperial Seal on turn 1 to 18,
classic Force of Phil thinking right there.
It's just next level, is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think those are 2 good points. I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see what other people think on this topic, because it's one of those things where to me it's an edge case. Like, I could argue for or against either one of these, and I often do. But also just getting another type of player's perspective on this is interesting, because, like I said, Phil and I don't play Doomsday. We don't play Storm. Phil played Storm at one point, I think. When he first got in, but we don't have that background. So it's always good to bring people on to get like sort of another idea about how they view the format.
Ask Phil if he wants to play me where every game I have Dark Ritual, Doomsday, and Mystical Dispute. That's what would happen if we had Imperial Spiel. Like literally every game.
Fair enough. I will do that. Well, Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks so much for your input, and yeah.
Thanks, Zach.
For the gift that keeps on giving all year round, join our Patreon at patreon.com/Eternal Durdles. And hey, check out this playlist we got up here with all of our interviews over the last couple of years. Some great people from the Legacy community, some really great guests.